How would you like to gain significantly more smoothness and power on your two-handed backhand in 15 minutes of work? That's what happened with my recent student, and I'm going to show you exactly how we did that. First, I want to see if you can spot the change we made. This is her backhand before we did any work together. And I want you to watch for overall smoothness, fluidity, athleticism, and just basically energy coming out of her body into the ball relative to how much force and effort does it look like she's actually putting into the swing. Let's watch one more. Okay, now with that in mind, I'm going to show you her backhand after we did the training together, and then I'll explain to you exactly what we did. All right, here's after 15 minutes of practice. By the way, exact same feed from the ball machine. And watch the overall feel of these swings compared to the first ones. And again, looking for smoothness, efficiency, athleticism. Can you pick out what we changed? Okay, so before I tell you what we changed, let's go to Arena and Carlos really quick. And I want you to watch how they both start their two-handed backhand. Before they actually make the swing forward and start using their body, I want you to look at the height that Arena brings her racket to and watch the path of the racket, how her hands are going to drop, then her body is going to start to turn, and at the bottom of the swing, she starts to pull the racket forward with her torso and with her hips and with her shoulders. And then the racket is on its way up through the point of contact and around to her follow through. So there's a smooth, circular, kind of pendulum-like flow to this swing. And there's kind of a magical pocket of time. When the racket gets right around here, she's timing this drop of her racket in her hands so that right as the racket gets to the bottom is when her hips are really starting to pull the racket forward. And so she gets bonus momentum. The drop of her hand and her rackets, her hands and her racket, rather, is passive. And she's just allowing the gravity of Earth to pull the racket down. Just imagine for a moment, just conceptually, a roller coaster starting at the top of a hill, falling down the hill, and then it gets to use that momentum at the bottom of the hill to ramp itself back up to the next hill. What if the roller coaster started from a static position with no momentum, no speed at the bottom of the hill, and it had to push itself up the next hill? Think about how much strain and struggle, how much work and effort and energy would it take for a motor or an engine or something like that to push it up the next hill. Instead, Arena is starting at the top of the hill, building energy and momentum, and then timing her body's turn so that she can harness that momentum and slingshot it around the bottom of that drop and then up through the rest of the swing. Watch Carlos. He's going to do the same thing. He's starting with his hands up and the racket head in a high position. He's going to hold this position, sorry about that, until it's the right time to start, and he's going to time it so that when his hands fall right about the bottom of the swing, his hips and his torso are going to begin their forward turn, and then all that energy is going to be seamlessly transitioned in a circular path around through contact and into the follow through. Okay, so with that picture in mind, here's my student's original swing again. Watch where she started, at the bottom of the hill. Great preparation here. But you see how there's no blur on the racket? And as of right now, it's completely static. It's just hanging out. It has no momentum. So instead of building energy and momentum down the roller coaster hill, she's starting at the bottom. And so when her body starts to turn, now the racket's blurring, but she had to begin from a static, stopped position with no energy and momentum, and then use effort and tension and muscle contraction to pull the racket forward. She's still a great athlete, and frankly, she still had a good backhand. But can you see how adding all of that additional energy and then timing it to slingshot the racket would add a lot more fluid, smooth, flowing energy. So with that concept in mind, let's see, where's her backhand? Here we go. Here's the after. Watch the difference now. Here, I'm just going to play it in half speed. And watch how she's using... Oh, that's the end of it. Sorry. Watch how she's using that roller coaster concept here. And I'm going to give you a little kind of secret to this. This is her first time ever trying this. Well, not literally this drill. We did a couple drills. If you want to know like what the step-by-step drills were, let me know in the comments below. I won't have time to do like the full, like here's drill 1, here's drill 2. And this, I just want to give you the 30,000 foot view kind of concept here. And if you want the step-by-step drills, let me know. I'll do it on the Essential Tennis channel and not this channel. But watch how, and I'm going to give you like a little detail here that's critically important. But here, I said I'd play it in half speed. So here's half speed. Watch the difference, how she's waiting at the top now, dropping and then turning. So she gets the benefit of all that free energy from planet Earth. And I think this next, if I remember correctly, this next one was a nice smooth one. I want to show you the difference. Let me watch one more. There's a little detail that's critically important, and I want to show you the difference between, yeah, here we go, doing it and not doing it. She timed that one very nicely. Yeah, okay. It was this one and the one before. If you want to practice this, here's a key element. If you begin the drop of the racket too soon, you end up getting kind of stuck. In other words, she's starting up like Arena and Carlos, but if you begin this drop down the hill too soon, and it's not time to turn the body yet when the racket gets down to here, then we end up just kind of wasting that energy because the racket's going to have to pause and kind of hang out for, even if it's just a brief split second. If we have to slow down the energy, we don't get the full benefit. We don't get the full smoothness or fluidity. We don't get all the momentum harnessed, and we don't get the power on the back end of it from all the free energy from the racket falling first. So what she noticed immediately when she started practicing this was if she got a little bit too impatient and started dropping the racket a little bit too soon, there would end up being a little bit of a pause here, and then she would basically be left exactly where she was before and have to pull the racket forward from a static position. She actually did pretty well on that one. I thought there was one here. These are all timed actually pretty well. Sorry, I should have found the pause one. This one has a little bit of deceleration right around here. You see how she's kind of hanging out just a little bit right there, and there's a little bit of deceleration, and then she has to start pulling it again. So she's not getting the full benefit of that roller coaster hill. And if I remember correctly, it's this next one that she manages really nicely. Yeah, this one's really seamless and smooth. And so if you're gonna, here's the bottom line. If you're going to wait somewhere for the ball, it should be waiting here at the top of the hill. And the key, so this is like a simple concept, but not easy in practice. In practice, we want to wait just the right amount of time. If you wait too long, then you end up getting rushed like down the hill and then up again, and everything gets really clunky and rushed and kind of rigid and tight. But if you start too soon, then you have to take a pit stop at the bottom. That kills the momentum, and then we have to pull the racket forward from a static position, and everything gets really rigid and tight and kind of contracted again. So finding just the right moment to initiate the drop of the hands so that when the hands get to the bottom, it's the perfect time to start turning the body. That's the magic kind of pocket of time. And that's where most of her focus was on as she started practicing this in real life, was holding the racket at that high position just the right amount of time so that once it started dropping, everything was seamless and smooth. There's one more thing I want to point out real quick. This is a wild, it seems like it shouldn't be connected, but I want you to notice how her arms look much more relaxed and smooth and extended on most of these hits compared to her original swing. Her original swing looked very jammed. And I made a bet with her She pointed this out when we did our initial analysis of her backhand, and she was like, oh, but I'm getting too close to the ball, aren't I? And in my experience, I've found what seems like kind of an illogical connection between building more smooth flowing energy and an automatic subconscious adjustment in spacing relative to the ball. And this we're getting a little bit nerdy here, but just follow with me for just a sec. What came first, the chicken or the egg on her original backhand? Was she really rigid, intense, and tight with her arms because of the lack of momentum? And so over time, she subconsciously figured out that she needed to put the ball closer to herself to accommodate for those rigid, tight arms. And so it just made sense to get closer to the ball because everything was rigid. And in other words, because there was no flow of energy or momentum, she didn't have the option of extending and relaxing her arms through because everything had to be contracted from her shoulders down to her elbows, out into her hands. Everything had to be contracted because she had no momentum to work with. And so over time, subconsciously, she put the ball closer and closer to herself as she got more and more rigid and tight. And so without asking her to think about her spacing, so here, let me find, here's a perfect example. This is a before backhand. Her arm's already rigid and tight. Look at how there's no momentum on the racket whatsoever. And so she has to start from a static position here and watch this swing. It would be very easy and frankly, logical, I think, for a coach or a player to watch that swing and be like, oh, we need to work on your spacing. You're so jammed. You're too close to the ball. Give yourself more space. You need to extend your arms, relax your arms. But how can she, again, chicken or the egg, how can she relax if there's no momentum to work with? If she's not slingshotting the racket and the racket is getting stuck here and then she has to muscle the racket around, do you see how the dominoes possibly are in the reverse order of what most people would think? And so without any focus or practice or training or advice or tips on spacing, she started hitting backhands like this with her arms much more free and loose and extended without working on her spacing, without working on her judgment of the ball or her footwork or anything like that. These are the things that really fascinate me. Everything's always interconnected, at least to a degree. And then B, figuring out what is the order of operations? Was it the tightness and tension that led to close jammed spacing? Or was it, and sometimes this is true, was it a habit of close jammed spacing that made everything tight and tense? Which was it? Was it the chicken or the egg? And I'm very confident in seeing the before and after here. This was literally 15 minutes of practice without working on footwork, without working on spacing, without saying a single word about giving herself more space. She started building in more space and finding more fluidity and smoothness because she had momentum and energy to work with. These are the things that fascinate me as a coach, and the connections and the concepts that I'm most excited about sharing with you. Unfortunately, these are also the least sexy and the least attractive. Your average player is looking for something much more exciting. But for me, super nerdy kind of tacticianer of coaching and improving biomechanics, I love these kind of connections. Anyway, hopefully something here is helpful for you. Thanks for watching today. Keep up the great work on your game. I'll talk to you again soon.